All right. Okay, welcome everybody to our first meeting of January for West Perth Council meeting. Just a couple items here before we get going. Murray Rose, the tough life that he lives, is on his way back from Panama, so he's not going to be here tonight. And Phil is joining us online. He is involved out of town with his work, so he's joining us by Zoom. So you won't see those two people here tonight, but I'm sure they're with us in their thoughts. So just before we get into the crux of the meeting, I would ask council and our guests, if they so wish, we'll just bow our heads and have a moment of silent reflection. Okay, thank you. So we do have a fairly lengthy agenda tonight. Forget what it was it 585 pages? So we will work our way through it here tonight and go from there. So first item then, we'll call this meeting officially to order. There is a couple minor adjustments here or tweaks to the agenda. We do have bylaw number 6, 2025 is an amendment to the schedule of fees and charges bylaw that will be added to the agenda. Where are we adding that, Becky? At the end, yeah, in the bylaws. So 9.7 is where that'll be. And the other item is that we're going to move the Hillebright drain from where it is, and we're going to put it right after the public meeting. So it'll be 5.1.3. And that's just to accommodate all the people that are here so that they don't have to wait to the end of the meeting for that one. So those are the two items. There's nothing else, is there, Becky? We're good? Okay, so we'll carry on then. First item is the confirmation of the agenda as amended. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Vink, seconded by Councillor Feltz. All those in favor? Opposed? If any, that's carried. There is a number of items on the consent agenda. I guess first of all, I should ask, I haven't done this for a year, so first thing I should do is there anybody have a conflict of interest with anything on the agenda? Okay, if you do, you can always declare it as we go along. So the consent agenda, number of items there, there's 12 items to be exact. Is there anything there that anybody would like pulled or an explanation on? Councillor Fournier?
Through your worship, item 4.2, the Municipal Accountability Act, if I could.
Okay. Do you have a question on it or?
I'm sorry, I somewhat lost my way there. It's an item that came up, I believe, about a year and a half ago that councillors were across the province were requested to consider and offer support to at the time, whether or not if they care to. And I personally did care to because having seen some of the councillor related issues coming up in some of the other municipalities that I hear about, it seems that having a bit more of a robust process for dismissing of councillors who are somewhat frivolous about the rules might be a good idea. And this particular act, I wouldn't say that it's particularly robust itself. You need an awful lot of unanimity when it comes to dismissing anybody through this, but at least it does offer an avenue to do it should it become necessary. Okay. So I would like it.
We can pull it and deal with it separately. Is there anything else? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, item 4.5, I just wanted to make a comment on that item. City of Guelph proposing to charge fees for the use of gas utilities at municipal properties.
Okay, so you want to support that one? We'll deal with that one separately, or?
No, I'm taking the opposite.
Okay, all right, no, that's
position on
fine.
that.
Okay, good. All right, we'll deal with that. Then we'll pull that one out as well. Any others? I had put in 4.4 And we've had that on our agenda before. I just put it in there in case anybody wanted to reconsider. There's been a number of municipalities that have supported that resolution. Basically what it is they want a share of the, help me out, Dan, land transfer tax, that should be divvied up a little bit to the municipalities to offset some of the expenses. So it's there. You don't necessarily have to support it. I just put it there for your consideration. So if there's no support, that's fine. We'll just move on. Okay, if there's nothing else, then a motion to accept the consent agenda with the exception of 4.2 and 4.5 would be in order. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Fournier, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay, so 4.2, Andrew?
Just, I'm sorry, I have rather a bit too much on my mind at the moment. Could you, somebody run me the forms here? I'm requesting the council consider this for support.
At this stage, they're looking for comments. So if you would like staff to come back with proposed comments,
Thank you very much.
we could bring that to the next council meeting and then have council direction from that point on.
If you could, thank you very much.
Okay, so I assume, Andrew, you would move that we come back with a staff report. Okay, do we have a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Jankowski, any further discussion on that? Question, Dean?
Just to supplement Councillor Fournier's request, this item was also discussed at the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus at their January meeting last week, and Western Ontario Wardens Caucus will also be making a submission with comments as well. So our comments from West Perth would tie in nicely with those as well.
Okay, thanks, Dean. All right. We didn't take a vote on that. I don't think nobody else had any comments. So all those in favor of supporting that resolution? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Good. All right, and 4.5, Dean?
Yes, 4.5. So the city of Guelph is asking the province to amend section 9 of the regulation 58406 under the Municipal Act of 2001 to permit municipalities to charge fair fees I'll say that again, to permit municipalities to charge fair fees to for-profit gas utilities for the use of their public property, as municipalities do in most other provinces. It's an interesting idea. They're trying to raise some additional revenue, but from the point of view of trying to provide incentives to utilities to provide that quote unquote last mile of service to customers, it's a bad idea. It disincentivizes the smaller utilities from providing gas service, and it ultimately the cost of this tax would the end user, the customer, would be paying for it. So I would not support this resolution as provided by the city of Guelph. That's my comment. Thanks.
Anybody else have any further comments with regards to that? Wendy, do you have anything to add? I don't want to throw you under the bus, but you're dealing with this on a regular basis.
I don't have a whole lot prepared for this other than for taxation purposes. The pipeline generates $44,000 for us in revenue. So there is a bit of assessment revenue that is coming from pipelines.
Dan?
I'll just add for council, if it's any consolation, coming from a different province where you were allowed to charge these franchise fees, they were largely just passed on to the end user at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just offer that to council.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion on that? So Dean, you would make a motion that we not support it.
That's correct.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Harold? Last call for comments or questions? Councillor Vink?
Mayor McKenzie, I don't quite understand how the not support would work. So is Dean asking for a letter to be sent in opposition to the
I was taking that we would send a letter to Guelph set telling them that we're not in support of it. Otherwise, we would do nothing. We would just pull the resolution. So is that your intent, Dean? Yeah,
To affirm the opposite point of view, yes.
okay. So Dean moved, Steve seconded. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay. Moving on. Brings us down to item number 5, and we do have a public meeting with regards to 190 Napier Street. So at this time, go ahead.
Just to the proximity of my residence, I'm going to excuse myself for the meeting and I'll ask Matt Burns, the CBO, to come sit up here as acting CAO during this time.
Okay. So we're going to call this public meeting to order at 7:11. And I'm going to ask our Deputy Clerk, Becky DeWittering, for the purpose of this public meeting.
So the purpose of the public meeting is to allow interested members of the public the opportunity to ask questions or offer comments about a proposed amendment to bylaw 100-1998, the zoning bylaw, affecting the properties known as 190 Napier Street and 5135 Line 34. If any member of the public would like to be notified in writing of the decisions made by council, they are to provide their name, mailing address, and email to clerk@westperth.com.
Good. I hadn't done that this year either. So, public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Rubens Home Improvements, Inc. I will now call upon John Bice, who is hiding behind the podium there, I can't see, planner for the County of Perth, to review the application and present any correspondence received. So, John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor McKenzie, Council, and members of the public. Wait for the slideshow here. No worries. Perfect. So this is zoning bylaw file ZN 13-2024. It's located at 190 Napier Street. So on the red star on the slide there, it's on the corner of Napier and William Street. And the owner is Rubens Home Improvements. So the Mitchell Ward official plan designates the property as residential. The West Perth zoning bylaw currently zones the property Mitchell Residential R2. The proposed West Perth zoning bylaw amendment that is being sought here is to change the zone from R2 to R4 special, so R4-19. And the end goal for the zone change would be to construct a 6-unit apartment dwelling. Subject lands are 0.15 hectares, about a third of an acre. Road access, 19.9 meters along Napier Street, as well as about 73 meters along William Street. And this is a photo of the subject property. It's taken from William Street, and that was on January 10th. So the proposed 6-unit apartment development is considered to be consistent with the 2024 provincial planning statement, as it is considered a form of intensification that is an efficient use of land and existing municipal infrastructure. And it provides a mix of housing options for the existing and future residents and the regional market area. This image is of the proposed, it's a rendering of the proposed apartment. It's located, the viewpoint is from William Street. The proposed development does also conform with the objectives of the residential designation as outlined in the Mitchell Ward official plan. The surrounding area is comprised of a mixture of existing and planned residential developments. And These types include, there's a 15-unit apartment dwelling located at the old Mitchell Nursing Home, and that's located directly to the south of this property. Not directly, it's about 2 properties south, that is. The Mitchell Ward official plan also sets out residential density guidelines, stating that low-rise apartment buildings will have a density of between 40 and 70 units per hectare. The Mitchell Ward official plan contemplates these types of developments within the residential area. The proposal for 6 units on a lot in the residential area of Mitchell with an area of about 0.145 hectares provides a density of approximately 41 units per hectare, which is on the lower end of the recommended density requirements for low-rise apartments in the Mitchell Ward official plan. The density is therefore considered appropriate for the size of the property. The proposal was also reviewed by BM Ross Consultant Engineers for the Municipality of West Perth, who have indicated that the development of 6 units will not create a significant impact on traffic issues in the neighborhood. The West Perth Director of Operations has also indicated that they have no concerns from a roads/operations perspective. The Mitchell Ward official plan indicates that apartments and townhouses shall be buffered from existing developments to ensure compatibility between those developments as well as privacy. This proposal is required to provide a planting strip along the western and southern property boundaries. And this will ensure privacy considerations are maintained. Apartments and townhouse dwellings shall be compatible in form and character with surrounding the area as well. And that's what is situated within the Mitchell Ward official plan. Apartments, the apartment proposed, that is proposed to be 2.5 stories in height. The end height would be 8.25 meters with half of a story below grade. This was a consideration upon the owner's architect or the agent to ensure that the height provisions would not negatively impact the neighboring property owners. At 8.25 meters in height and 2.5 stories, it's a similar height of residential development in the neighborhood within that R2 zone. There's also adequate servicing capacity for the proposed development. There may be a need to increase a servicing stub, but that would be at the owner's expense. Finally, the Mitchell Ward official plan identifies a 15% target for intensification and infill or redevelopment. And this proposal is considered contributing towards that 15%. So the West Perth zoning bylaw, in the West Perth zoning bylaw, the R2 zone permits the development of single detached dwellings, bed and breakfasts, and similar uses, whereas the R4 zone permits the development of row townhouse units, stacked townhouses, fourplexes, apartment buildings, and things like that. The applicant has applied for these following relief considerations from the R4 zone, and we'll get into that in a second here. So this is an image that I conjured up, essentially outlining exactly what is being proposed for and requested for relief from. The proposal itself is similar to a stacked townhouse. However, the proposed concept is 3 units tall by 2 units wide, rather than the West Perth zoning bylaw definition of stacked townhouses, which is 2 units tall and 3 units wide. So this similarity to a stacked townhouse is the reason for many of these special provisions requested from the R4 zone. So the applicant has applied for the special provisions listed, and we'll get into those now. The first being to reduce the minimum required lot frontage from 25 meters to 19.9. That is the orange line located at the extreme eastern portion of the subject lands. The intent of the minimum lot frontage provision is to ensure that there's adequate space provided for a building envelope, as well as separation from adjacent properties, parking requirements, and street access. This reduction requested is actually considered technical in nature. as the site's the front lot line is located along Napier Street. However, the facade of the apartment dwelling faces William Street, which has a lot, which is 72 meters in length. The orientation of the building as proposed and the usability of the site with access from William Street supports lot frontage being located off of William Street rather than the Napier Street that the West Perth zoning bylaw requires. So the proposal offers ample area for access, parking, and setbacks, and buffering from neighboring properties. So planning staff believe that this request is considered appropriate. The next three requests are kind of similar in nature, so I'll kind of bundle them together here. So that being to reduce the minimum front yard depth from 7.5 to 6 meters. And that would be the green image. To reduce the minimum interior side yard width from 6 to 4.5. That would be the blue. And then to reduce the minimum exterior side yard, which would from 7.5 to 6 meters, and that would be the purple. So each of these requests are 1.5 meters, are being requested for a 1.5 meter relief. And each of these reliefs being sought are the requirements of a townhouse proposal in the R4 zone. So essentially what the owner and the architect is applying for relief regarding would be essentially to access the townhouse provisions rather than the apartment provisions. Due to the nature of the proposal being so similar to a townhouse, planning staff find these three requests appropriate. We'll go into the last few here, and that would be to reduce the minimum to increase the number of maximum permitted driveways from 1 to 2. This requirement is located at the yellow images on the slide there. So the requirement to limit residential developments to only one access is to essentially limit the amount of accesses onto public streets in West Perth. This request to add an additional driveway to the proposal was reviewed by West Perth consultant engineers BM Ross, as well as the Director of Operations, who has indicated that there are no concerns with this additional driveway. Additionally, the site has greater than 20 meters of street line along William Street there, 72 meters in total. So, and it's also, the driveways are further than 7.5 meters away from each other. So planning staff believe the request is appropriate. Finally, the last request is to reduce the minimum requirement for one accessible parking space from 1 to 0. Accessible parking spaces, and that's located in the red image there. Accessible parking space requirements are in place to ensure residential development with multiple units, provides parking for people with disabilities. Accessible parking spaces are often located in close proximity to entrances of buildings, which allow for a parking aisle, which offers these residents and visitors more space to exit their vehicles. The West Perth zoning bylaw provides exemptions for this requirement for single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, duplex dwellings, street front townhouse dwellings, and converted dwellings. Apartments, however, are not exempt and shall require parking for the physically disabled. The owner's architect establishes that under the Ontario Building Code, the proposal is not required to have barrier-free units, and therefore it is the architect's opinion that the building and the proposal itself shouldn't have barrier-free spaces, parking spaces, that is. And this may be true as it pertains to the Ontario Building Code. However, the request to remove the requirement for one accessible parking space is specific to the West Perth zoning bylaw, and we're not speaking about the Ontario Building Code in this case. As the proposal's parking area is more in keeping with that of an apartment rather than what you would typically see in a townhouse development, It is the opinion of staff that the accessible parking space requirement shall be maintained. Additionally, there is adequate space available for the one required accessible parking space. The zoning bylaw here requires 9 parking spaces at 1.5 spaces per unit. So the proposal is for 11 parking spaces, whereas 9 is required. So there is ample space available to have that accessible parking space. Therefore, it is the opinion of planning staff that it should be provided. The public notice and recommendation here. Notice was provided to the neighboring property owners on December 23rd in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. We have received multiple letters of opposition from neighboring property owners. I believe we're at 5 at this point, but I'll have Becky confirm that at this point. Agency comments were also received from Upper Thames, BM Ross, which I went into, as well as the Director of Public Works. Upper Thames indicated no objections. Planning staff at this point support the zoning bylaw amendment with the exception of the request to remove the one accessible parking space. So planning staff are of the opinion that the development for a 6-unit apartment is consistent with the provincial planning statement as well as the Mitchell Ward official plan. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, John. We'll reserve our questions a little later, but don't go too far away. So at this time, I would ask if the applicant or the applicant's agent wishes to come forward and add anything further.
Is this on?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You may want to lift it up a little bit. You're a little taller than what John was.
Okay, thanks. So I just want to comment on the accessible parking space. So what I can find, the AODO requirements for the parking don't apply unless the interior building code requires it. And with our planning development being consistent in the building code with a stacked townhouse dwelling, and the building being classified, whether it's classified as an apartment building or a stacked townhouse, it falls under Group C major occupancy with less than 600 square meters of building area and under 3 stories. For buildings that fall under those specifications, barrier-free path of travel is not required in the building. Therefore, we believe that the parking actually wouldn't be required to have an accessible parking space. So if there'd be a clarification on that, maybe from planning, or if someone had a comment on that, but I don't believe that the barrier-free parking space would be required, or is that a specific West Perth
I
planning
believe it's
bylaw?
specific to West Perth, but
Is
Matt, if you want to jump in here, that would be fine.
Yeah, through your worship, yeah, it is a specific requirement in the zoning bylaw. It has been since 1998. Just to elaborate a little bit, since I've been here, we've done 5 fourplexes and all of which have had accessible parking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's specific to the West Perth.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
okay.
you're right. In the Ontario Building Code, and your designer was right as well. Your architect was right. It's not considered an apartment, so it doesn't have to have a minimum number of accessible units and therefore accessible parking. But because it's a townhouse, stacked townhouse, in essence, it's still required under our zoning bylaw.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Just before you sit down, could you give us your name, please? And I know Becky knows you, but nobody else here does.
Yeah.
So.
Sure, my name is Ruben Vanden Assem.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, is there anybody wishing to speak in support of the application at this time? All right. Is there people opposed to the application? And we have some letters. We could read them first and then I'll open it up if you want to. If there's anybody else wants to speak, they can at that time. So Becky, you have some letters here.
So there is actually a sixth one that we just received, but I'll read all 6 of them. So the first is from Sharon Bowes. Said concerning lot 17, I am in opposition for this 6-unit apartment on Napier Street, 190 Plan 339. From Len and Gail Johnson, they said, we are strongly opposed to the zoning chart change to allow a 6-unit building on the corner of Napier and William Street. There's already too many problems at that corner and would only make things worse. We all bought places in this area because it was a residential low-density zone. That was the attraction to the area, and it has become a very busy corner. 12 more cars and more people crammed into a tiny space would create a huge problem for everyone concerned. The value of our homes would definitely decrease, as well as the construction already in our area would make life here miserable. Please do not allow these changes to go through. From Erwin Takax, sorry if I mispronounced that. I am completely opposed to the application for apartment building on this site. Firstly, the site is in the middle of a low density zone. Secondly, 7 site specific provisions to make this monstrous building to fit. I didn't agree with the severing the lot in the first place. Is this the same applicant from the corner of Napier and Blenheim? From Diane Gaffney and Mary Louise LaBerge. We are writing to you regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for part lot 17, Reg Plan 339, Mitchell Ward. Our home is located at 185 Napier Street, directly across the street from the lot in question. Firstly, we wish to inform you that we are understanding of the need for higher density housing options in West Perth. Our concern is that the size and location of this property are not suitable for the size of apartment building being proposed in this application, as evidenced by the 7 variances requested to our zoning bylaws. And then she lists the 7 that John already spoke about. Therefore, it is abundantly clear that this proposed building is too large for the size of this property. In addition, we have significant safety concerns about this proposal. 2 driveways in close proximity to the 4-way stop at the corner of Napier and William Street will pose a risk to pedestrians and vehicular traffic at this busy intersection. The size of this building would also greatly reduce the visibility at the intersection for northbound and eastbound traffic. With respect to parking, even if the proposal includes parking spaces for the residents of the building, any visitors would have to park on the streets, further adding to the congestion and safety concerns. If council approves these extensive and significant variances to our existing zoning bylaws, a dangerous precedent will be set, rendering our zoning bylaws meaningless and unhelpful for meaningful, thoughtful municipal planning and development. One developer's request should not override the rights and interests of all of the other residents of this neighborhood who are concerned about the negative impacts of this development. A multi-resident complex of this nature is not in keeping with the neighborhood, which could negatively impact the property values of our homes. Therefore, we respectfully request that council rejects this zoning bylaw amendment application. Our sincere thanks for the opportunity to voice our concerns, and we thank you for your consideration of these comments. From Jean Anderson, let me please start by saying I'm aware of the dire need for housing, not just in West Perth, but in all of Ontario. Council needs to be progressive, even aggressive, in the development of new builds. Council must also be attentive and vigilant in the protection of our landscape, our green space. If our cultural landscape is lost in the face of development, over time, West Perth will cease being a desirable place to live. Our community will continue to thrive, providing a balance is maintained, but as of late, I have witnessed a shift in that balance. Housing with minimal green space and no or very little parking. There are 7 concessions being requested for 190 Napier that should be an indication the project is not suitable in that location. A 2.5-story with very minimal green space and multiple driveways does not support the landscape in this low density maximum 1.5-story location. 5 of the 7 requests result in the elimination of most of the green space. The request for a second driveway, from what I understand, is a 6-plex would congest what is already a very busy area, especially considering this is a corner property at a stop sign. The Mitchell Golf Course is a well-renowned and a draw to many visitors. Traffic flow and the visual integrity of the area should be a priority. Not just today and tomorrow should be considered, but long-term effects of your decisions must be considered. Example, Blanchard, Highway 23 South, in addition to St. David and Huron Road, both no green space and congested parking or not enough parking for the number of units. The Blanchard Highway 23 South build, as a result, have never secured even one tenant, and the building is now for sale. In hindsight, I hope there is the realization all these concessions permitted should have been given more consideration. We need to continue to develop and grow, but please don't lose sight of what makes this community desirable, a place people want to live and are proud of. I know with the recent changes in LPAT, there is virtually no recourse with any decision council makes, but I implore you to consider the impact this bill will have on the prominent part of Mitchell. Finally, I would like to bring to your attention, less than 48 months ago, I made an application to sever the lot in question. I proposed to build 2 small one-story residential homes, and I was denied at the consult stage. I was told the driveway had to enter and exit from Napier Street, and there had to be backyard green space, not a side yard. Lastly, the property was deemed too small and required too many concessions. If the denial was given to maintain the integrity and landscape of the area, I ask that you please keep the same mindset when considering this rezoning. Thank you for your time and allowing me to have a voice in the community. And finally, the last was from Kendra Ward, and she said, we are opposed to an apartment building being built on that corner for multiple reasons.
Okay, thanks, Becky. Okay, at this time then, we'll open it up. If there is any additional opposition to this application, I would ask if you can come up to the mic, give us your name so that we can record it in the minutes of the meeting. So I'll throw it open at this particular time if there's any further objections at this time. Oh, yeah, sorry, name and address, sorry.
Hi, my name is Jillian,
Pull that down.
and in fact, the short side. Jillian Kipfer, and my address 53 William Street. So I did send in a letter, maybe it wasn't there, had sent in an email a few months ago, just in my opposition as well, on behalf of my husband and I that are at 53 William. So maybe that wasn't received, but I did send that in to.
I don't believe we did receive it. I don't know if John got it. No.
Okay, basically just I want to echo the same things that were said, that living in that area, it is high density and there's a lot of families and young children that use that area. And I do find that intersection quite busy. And again, just echoing, if the building is there, the visibility may be decreased at that spot. That again is a really high traffic zone. Yeah, and I think that was kind of in addition to everything that's already been said, but that would probably be the only additional fact. And I think also just echo the fact, and I'm happy to hear about the accessible parking path or parking spot just working in the healthcare system. I think there's a lack of accessible housing, and even just the spots creates kind of that attitude that that's not important. So that's all.
Okay.
Thank you
very much. Diane? Same rules apply, Diane. You got to give us your name and address.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the mic back up. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight. I had requested to say a few words. I didn't realize that our letters were going to be read out loud, so I'm really going to shorten what my comments are for tonight. I also want to start by wishing everybody a Happy New Year. I don't think I've seen any of you since the New Year. As I said earlier, I'm at 185 Napier Street in Mitchell, directly across from the lot in question. My letter stated kind of in essence all of the concerns that we have. At the time when the initial application went in, there were actually 7 variances, and I see that's down to 6. I think one was with respect to the building height, and that has been revised. So what I wanted to point out is that it may come across that it may seem like we're thinking this is just a not in my backyard sort of situation. I think all of us recognize the need for higher density living options in West Perth and indeed throughout the province. We know we'd have to be living under a rock if we didn't know that that's an issue for us. And I think all of us recognize that we have a new apartment building that's just down the street from us in the old Mitchell Nursing Home development. None of us objected to that. We certainly think that was a very appropriate development and good use of that property. Our concerns are really threefold, 3 main categories that have been spoken to a lot, so I'm not going to go into detail about it, but the inappropriateness of the proposed development size for the building lot and the location of that lot, safety concerns, with respect to this proposal, and also the risk to the integrity and usefulness of our zoning bylaws. So I'll just speak to the first one very briefly. So 6 of those zoning variance requests, just the sheer number alone speaks to the fact that this development seems to be too large for the property. And these variances weren't insignificant. 20% was the lowest variance. And 2 of them were 100% variances on our existing bylaws. So that seems kind of significant. With respect to the safety concerns, that is a very busy intersection, and living there, anyone who lives around that corner can tell you that 4-way stop often is not respected. If I'm ever out in our front lawn area on the weekend, it's not abnormal to see at least 2 or 3 people blow right through that stop sign. So anything that impedes the vision of the visibility of that intersection could lead to safety concerns, and we have a lot of children living in the neighborhood. So I think everything else was said in the letter. The integrity of our zoning bylaws, I guess we'd have to assume that our zoning bylaws were developed based on standards that were developed, deemed to be appropriate and necessary for healthy developments in our municipality. So to approve such extensive and numerous variances for one development would throw into question the usefulness and real meaning of our zoning bylaws and really set a dangerous precedent, I think, for future developments. Adherence to these bylaws is required to ensure meaningful and thoughtful municipal planning and development. So I think all of us, the rest of us have to abide by our bylaws, and we think that any future developments should be developed in accordance with them as well. So in closing, I just wanted to recognize, of course, that council has to weigh a lot of competing priorities, and we certainly recognize that and respect it. I'm certain that there are other more suitable building lots available for such a development, or a revised smaller building plan that could be used for this property that would be more suitable for the nature and character of the neighborhood. So I want to thank you for the opportunity for input, both in writing and to be able to come tonight. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Diane. Anybody else at this time? Okay, I don't see anybody's hand going up or anybody moving, so I think we'll just leave it at that. So our next zoning bylaw amendment is zoning bylaw amendment number 16, 2024, and we will proceed with that one. This is a public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Monteith, Ritzma, and Phillips on behalf of PLR Farms Limited. And now I'll call on John Bice, planner for the County of Perth, to review the application and present any correspondence received.
Thank you, Mayor McKenzie, members of council, and members of the public. So this zoning bylaw amendment, ZN 16-2024, the owners being PLR Farms. It's located at 5135 line 34, which is approximately halfway between Searingville and Mitchell there. It's on the south side of line 34 at the Red Star.
Okay, yeah.
So this
I see them.
application
I
is a
knew that.
condition of a surplus farm dwelling severance. It's a rezoning, so that consent file was B29-24. The severed lot had a lot area of about just over a hectare, with the retained farm lot being about 20.5 hectares in size. The area outlined in yellow to be rezoned A1 subscript 11, and that's to allow the non-farm residential dwelling. The special provision is to permit a lot frontage of 26 meters where 30 meters is required. And then the area outlined in red to be rezoned A3 subscript 16, and this is to ensure no residential dwellings will be placed on that retained farmland. The site-specific nature of the zone change is to permit a lot area of 20.5 hectares where 22 is required. So no concerns have been expressed from members of the public or any agencies. PLR Farms owns 2 properties with dwellings, 2 farm properties, that is, with dwellings, making the dwelling at 5135 surplus to their needs. servicings to remain private, excuse me, and the livestock barns have been removed. No adverse effects are anticipated from the site-specific reductions. And this is a photo of the subject property. I can take any questions.
Okay, thanks, John. Okay, so at this time, I would ask if the applicant or their agent wishes to add any more? You're good, Bill? Okay. Is there anybody else present that wishes to speak in support of this application? Is there anybody present that is opposed to this application? General comments or questions from council? Any questions? I don't think I asked that on the last one, but I think we were well aware of what was going on. Okay, then I would like to thank everyone for their comments. Should council proceed with the adoption of the zoning bylaw amendments, the notice of passing will be provided as prescribed by the Planning Act and a 20-day appeal period to the Ontario Land Tribunal. We'll now close this public meeting at 7:46. Moved by Nicola, or question.
Question.
Okay, go ahead.
Mayor McKenzie, would it be appropriate just to outline the next steps that we'd be discussing these bylaws later on in the evening?
Yes.
And anybody that would like to, they can stay or watch the council discussion portion on YouTube.
We can do that. I guess the question I had, we have them listed to deal with right next after the public meeting, right? Don't we? Or not? No, we have a motion to accept the recommendation by staff, right? But the bylaw will be later on in the evening. And at that time, we will have the option, you can pass it or defer it or not approve it. So does that answer your question? Okay, all right. So the recommendation that we have here then, getting back to Nicholas's question, that the Council of Municipality of West Perth approve zoning 13/2024 is recommended by staff, that was submitted by Rubens Home Improvements, Inc., affecting lands legally described as Plan 339 Park Lot 17, RP 44R 5974, Part 3, Mitchell Ward in the Municipality of West Perth, 190 Napier Street, to rezone the subject lands from Mitchell Residential Low Density Zone 2 to Special Mitchell Resident High Density Zone 4 to facilitate a 6-unit apartment. And I just need a mover and seconder to accept that, if you wish. Moved by Andrew. Seconder? This is just to accept the staff report. Deputy Mayor Turkowski, thank you. Okay. Nicholas, you look puzzled.
Yes, I am. So are we considering the bylaw now? Or?
No.
Okay.
No, the bylaw is later on in the evening.
Okay.
At the end of the meeting.
But your recommendation that was moved and seconded was to approve the zoning bylaw as recommended by staff. So is that what we're doing right now?
That's what we
Okay.
have written here.
Very good.
So, yeah. Okay. So it's been duly moved and seconded. All right. I'll open it back up again for any further comments or discussion. Andrew first. Oh, Alex, sorry. Councillor Foster.
It's been a year. I had a question for John before he left, so I wanted to ask, what's the minimum standard in the West Perth zoning bylaw for the setbacks that relief is being requested from? Because I know we have a recommended standard that these is being relieved from, and then we have a minimum standard, do we not, for these?
So through you, Mayor McKenzie, the question is, what is being,
I remember on Victoria, there was the standard that's recommended, and then we had a minimum standard when they wanted to sever the lot for a second house there. And I was wondering if like a apartment building has minimum standards in the bylaw or not.
so through you, the mayor, the zoning bylaw sets out minimums for certain things and maximums for others. In this case, it's majority just the minimum standard, minimum requirement. And that was on at least 5 of them were minimums. The 6th being maximums, and that was for the driveway. And that was maximum of 1. And what's being requested is 2. There's no standards that apply in the zoning. It's either minimums or maximums at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thanks, your worship. So as similar to Councillor Fournier mentioned at the start of the meeting, I've got a lot of things on my mind too. And the thing is that the planner has stated that this submission generally conforms to the provincial policy statement, correct? Okay, so, and different reasons have been given in the presentations, and equally different reasons have been given in opposition. So if this council were to deny this application, what would have to happen next is either and John can guide me on this process, either the applicant does or does not appeal. And if the applicant does appeal, it would go to Ontario Land Tribunal. At that point, this council would have to find its own planner and make its own planning case to deny this application. So that would mean that John and as planner for the county and representing the municipality or representing the submission of the application, he would no longer be, he would be on the other side. I'll just say it plain. He would be on the other side. We would have to find our own planner and make our own case to deny this application. And then the tribunal would decide, like a referee, who's making the better planning argument, the applicant or the council through the planner that we would hire. Now, the crux of the matter is, and we would have to find a planner that would take the case on. And if there is no planner that will take this case on to deny this application, we would have this council would have no alternative but to withdraw the denial. So it comes down to planning and which is the better planning decision. I'm trying to explain this to council and I'm trying to explain this to the public because we've gone through this before at county council, similar situation. The lower tier denied the application. The application was denied at the county, but there was no planner willing to take on the case any further. So I'm having a hard time trying to find a way that another planner would take on this case and deny the application. That's what's on my mind right now. I've listened to both sides. I've read the provincial planning statement again and again over the holidays. I have a twisted sense of vacation, but that's what I do in my spare time. And I'm trying very hard to see what the way forward is on this issue. I seconded the motion so that we could get this motion on the floor and have a discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Some comments here from Becky and our mover and seconder. Who was the mover here now? Andrew moved this, and Dean seconded it. And it's a friendly amendment to the motion. So the first line, the recommendation is that the Council of Municipality of West Perth, we had in there approve. If we take approve out and put accept in there, so then we're accepting the staff report, not necessarily approving it. Would that be a friendly amendment for the mover and seconder?
I'd like to leave that one to Dean to comment, please.
Well, are we accepting this as information or what are we doing? I guess we're accepting it, but is it as information or are we, I'm confused.
Oh, sorry, John, go ahead.
No worries, through you, Mayor. The recommendation at this time from staff is to approve the zoning bylaw amendment as recommended by staff. So at this point, it would be 5 of these 6 amendments would be written in the bylaw, leaving out the request for accessible parking reduction. So at this time, the recommendation is for approval from staff as recommended by staff.
Saying we should leave it the way it's written.
Through you, Mayor, I'll leave it up to you.
All right. Well, okay. Nicholas, go ahead.
Mayor McKenzie, through you, to Deputy Mayor Trentowski's point. So if I summarize what I think he's saying, that we should consider this application on planning matters that have been presented to us, and our planner being our expert for us is recommending that we approve the application. Does that summarize it up?
I would say that's a good synopsis of what is going on. Anybody else? Doug, go ahead.
I'm skating on thin ice here a little bit because I live in the neighborhood. I do see we're kind of stuck because of provincial legislation. I don't think that it's a good fit where it is going on that corner because it's a congested corner. I do think we need to look at our parking bylaws because there is no place that they put apartments in that they have 1.5 cars. They usually have 2 plus visitors, and we're running into a problem with overnight parking, snow removal. And that particular one where the driveway is, you're at a 4-way corner there that has elevation issues. It's not a great corner to see anyways. And now we're moving setbacks of a building on a corner lot. I don't really agree with that, and the handicap parking should remain, but that's my 2 cents worth. And Dean, it's frustrating that they've handcuffed the local council on some of these decisions because of legislation.
Thank you, Doug. Anybody else? Nothing? Okay, it's been duly moved and seconded. Ready for the vote? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on then, the next one, the recommendation is that the Council of the Municipality of West Perth approve zoning bylaw 16/2024 submitted by Monteith Ritzma Phillips on behalf of PLR Farms Limited, affecting lands legally described as Part Lot 4, Concession 1, Fullerton, north of the railroad, as in R297215, save and accept easement therein, Municipality of West Perth, 5135, line 34. We have a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Harold, seconded by Councillor Phelps. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on, 5.13, we do have a drain report here, the Hillebright drain, and we have our representative from Spreet and Association, Brandon Widener, is here. So I will turn the floor over to you, Brandon.
Good evening, everybody. I don't know if we can put the map on the screen, or maybe you all have a copy. I'm not sure.
We have a copy in our agenda. Alex, go ahead. Oh, you really want it? Sure. Yeah. You like it, don't you? No. Do we have a map that we put up or not? There was a drainage map in the report, like a.
Usually it comes as 2 PDFs.
I know I saw it where. No. We're looking for a drainage map, man. I know there was one in the report. Is there not a map in there? I maybe was wrong and there is no map in there in his brain. Just the costs, the expenses.
Well, I'll continue. So tonight we have the Hillebrick drain. It's a drain that the township already exists. We had section 78 improvement. It's located around line 42 and road 170. Essentially, we received a request in August, the municipality did, and we were appointed later soon after that from Fred Glossier about drainage around the intersection. We had a site meeting in September of 24 to discuss this. We then came back with a proposal in October of 24 to produce this report, which was issued in November. Some of the reason was the report came a little quicker than maybe you usually see is landowner or the major landowners on this drain have wheat planted and they would like it constructed this summer. So tonight we have mainly a replacement of some existing drains. There's a main drain, there's a drain and a B drain. The main drain starts at the Northwest Municipal drain and then comes across a number of farms, goes across line 42. We then have an A drain that again starts just down by the Northwest and goes up to the intersection of road 170 and line 42 with a bunch of improvements proposed at that intersection. We then have a B drain, which comes off of the main and again goes to line 42. So in essence, we have a number of road crossings here. We have 5 in total, 3 of which crossed line 42, which is paved. So those are all proposed to be bores as based on discussions with staff. That road was paved not too long ago. So the project's quite large in scope, but it's all very similar. We have a number of road crossings. There's a couple owners on this drain, even though there's a number of properties, a lot of them are the same owners. So we are proposing a full replacement of the entire system. That being said, this drain was designed above what we call the ministry standard of 1.5 inches. We have proposed a 50 millimeter design. That being said, because it's a 50 mil design, there is no grant for the increase in size above the 1.5 inches. That's why it's shown separately in the report, as you'll see when you go to Schedule C. So the total cost of this project is about $463,000. Starts out with 30-inch tile and the sizes come down as we get closer to essentially line 42. Again, we're proposing boring on each of those crossings. Road 170 will be open cut. Most of the owners, if not all, have been contacted or present at the meetings we did have last fall. But yes, this report was issued in November. We're here now. One thing I will ask council is I did my part to expedite this so the landowners can have it done August, September of 25. That being said, I asked that they tender it sooner than later so we can get a contractor picked. Because if we wait till May or June, the owner's wish probably won't happen. So that's what I ask, but if anyone has any questions, happy to answer them.
Okay, thanks, Brandon. Any questions from members of council? Nicholas, go ahead.
Mayor McKenzie, that means we should have a quarter revision here shortly to make it all happen.
Dan?
Yeah, we'll have quarter revision, but from standard practice, we can put the tender out prior to, and we can just have a clause built into that tender, but at least that process gets moving and then quarter revision will get booked. Correct.
You just hold the tender until after the quarter revision. So, yeah, we could do that right away. No questions, other questions from council? Any questions from members of the audience? Question, go on.
Who decides who gets the job? It's pretty basic.
Okay. Can't guarantee you may not get somebody you don't want, but traditionally what we do is we have a number of contractors that we use and we just put it out there and we'll put a date on. Brandon, you can probably explain it better than I can.
Well,
Process.
This municipality, I believe, uses bids and tenders now.
Yeah.
I can
Okay,
answer
go
that
ahead,
question
Dan.
for you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a public tender process. So essentially at that point, it would be the highest score or the lowest bid. So at this process, we'd probably go with a bidding process. So the lowest bid would get it. Unless there was some drastic reason on some reference checks that didn't check out or anything like that.
They said a cheaper one came in at December, we kind of like, I don't know.
I see your hands up, so I'll go ahead.
One thing we can do when we write the tenders, we put dates in.
Yeah.
Now. Yeah, so that's typical tender process, and if they don't meet the dates, there's typically a penalty. That being said, I do understand the owners ask with saying they want maybe a certain contractor over another, and that's entirely the municipality's choice. We have did many projects in other municipalities where they're invite only tenders, if that's what the owner's asking. Take note, the owner that's asking owns like the majority of the watershed. They're well over the majority of the cost of the project.
Appreciate the comment. We do have policy to adhere to here. So we can review that and see if there's an exemption that would allow us to go that right. But just off the cuff, generally when we're talking about a sum of money, we have to go a public process.
Okay, Councillor Foster.
What's your proposed start date for the timeline? Because we could be late and then that'd be terrible if they showed up early. Because if the start line's the 1st of August for their dates and they show up on the 1st and the wheat's not off, that kind of sucks. Yeah, but we could get a wet July and you just stuck with it.
So typically, like most contractors, I would say are reasonable. And if we put a tender out and we say it's August 15th because there's wheat there, they're mainly understanding. That being said, it's the end date that matters more. And we would have to put an end date on it of probably November or December, because I don't believe the owner wants it done in the winter. Typically, if a job comes out in this time of year, say January, February, most of the contractors are understandable. That being said, not all the farms have wheat on them, and from what I understand, we'll be cutting some corn, etc. Like we try to work the best we can with the owners. I would say half of the project is in wheat, 2/3. So we're trying to accommodate that.
And traditionally, contractors are always looking for areas where they can get in sooner in certain areas than they can in the others. So I think it should work out for you, I would think. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I do have, I'll find the right spot. We do have a recommendation here then, if there's no further questions, that the Council of Municipality of West Perth accept the report from Spread Associates dated November the 19th, 2024 for the Hillebright Municipal Drain. Mover and seconder for that, Deputy Mayor Trinkowski, and seconded by Councillor Foster. Any further discussion, questions? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Good. Thanks, Brandon.
So I guess the question I would need from you, do we have a tender date or a tender timeline, or are we waiting till after the quarter revision?
We could, there's no reason we couldn't put tenders out right now, is there? We'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good. Okay, moving on brings us down to item 6.6.1, and I think, Nick, you're doing this one, is it? The DC fast charger approved funding.
Good evening, Mayor McKenzie and members of council. Before you, a report providing information about the approved funding of a level 3 DC fast charger. 2021, West Perth joined a regional partnership.
I missed it, sorry.
Sorry. No.
Yeah.
Regional partnership initially called the Southwestern Ontario Regional EV Network and later rebranded as Rural Recharge
To go back.
to develop EV charging infrastructure. The initiative aimed to address rural charging gaps, boost tourism, and support local municipalities and access grant funding. In 2024, as part of a $7 million program, Rural Recharge and IV Charging Network successfully secured $2.2 million through the Ontario Ministry of Transportation's Charge On program. West Perth specifically benefited from this funding with the approval of 2 DC fast chargers to be installed at the Mitchell Arena, fully funded up to $200,000. The chargers will be installed by IV Charging Networks within the next 12 months and be located with the other EV chargers at the Mitchell Arena. IV will own, operate, and maintain the chargers under a 10-year agreement with West Perth, ensuring long-term access and reliable EV infrastructure. If council has any questions, I can attempt to answer them now.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Questions for Nick on that? No questions? Okay. Then the recommendation is that West Perth receives the level 3 DC fast charger approved funding report for information. Moved by Councillor Vink, seconded by Councillor Phelps. Questions? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay. The next item up then is the Recreation Parks and Trails Master Plan.
This evening, I present a report seeking council's approval for the Recreation Parks and Trails Master Plan, which outlines strategies to improve recreational spaces, parks, outdoor spaces, and trails through 2034. The updated plan builds on the 2016 master plan and incorporates feedback from staff, consultation, public open houses, a community survey, youth survey, along with stakeholder workshops and interviews. The Recreation Parks and Trails report includes 79 recommendations for enhancements, upgrades, and maintenance of facilities, parks, trails, and recreational services, prioritized with timeframes and cost approximations. Financial investments are proposed and subject to budget approval. Confirmation of capital costs will have to be confirmed and then inputted into the 10-year capital budget. The plan addresses emerging community needs and will require ongoing collaboration from staff, service groups, local organizations, and council for a successful implementation. If anyone has any questions in regards to the master plan, they can answer them now.
Took me longer to read that report than it did you to present it. Questions on that one? Deputy Mayor?
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you, can I get a sense of a timeline on when actual numbers for the cost of these items is going to be assigned? Because right now I'm having a real tough time going ahead with a plan that has no financial numbers attached to them. And my experience in the past has been that's it creates a bad experience later.
Through you, Your Worship, it's something we can start right away if we so choose and work towards getting those numbers as soon as possible. Depending on what it is and what we're looking for exactly, then it could take a little longer, depending on the recommendation.
I think, okay, go ahead, Doug.
I'm just wondering if as council, we don't look at the 79 recommendations and try and narrow down our top ones instead of trying to figure out what the price is for 79, that we're not going to do 79. Would that be reasonable that we look at our top 10 and then price it that way instead of chasing the tail on the dog?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Phelps's question, that's exactly where I'm going with this, because I think the last report that we had like this, it was less than 79 recommendations, and the cost implications of those recommendations back then compared to the cost implications were not the same. Before this is much more onerous by comparison. So I would even go so far as I like the idea of the top 10. I would even go so far as the idea of splitting splitting the trails off as one section, one part, and the remainder as another part. Just so that we can drill down on both. But like you say, pick a top 10. I pick 5 from each the trail part and 5 from the remainder. But that would be my suggestion. Yeah, I want to see some progress on this issue, but I don't want to have it become an onerous financial burden that we just can't handle in the future.
Go ahead, Councillor Vink.
Mayor McKenzie, then might it be appropriate for a collaboration with the staff and council at, say, a mini strategic planning around the recreation and leisure master plan? Maybe take an afternoon, a day, I don't know, or a couple sessions that we can put a little bit of this discussion around a strategic plan to get it implemented, then so that we can, as council and staff, set some guidelines for staff to bring back what we want to accomplish and when we want to accomplish it by.
You know, I may be looking at this thing all wrong, but our previous plan that we had done, how many years ago, it was over 10, but it was a 10-year plan. And this one is the same. And I view it as a guide of what we can do. It doesn't necessarily have to all happen. It doesn't have to happen at once. It's something for us to set our goals for the next 10 years. And there's obviously some that are a better priority than others. Everybody knows what my priority is at the present time with this. And so I don't know if we're reading too much into this. Like, I know it's a fairly lengthy document, but if you know, like, we can, you know, go through it and pick out, you know, the low hanging fruit or the more urgent items that were addressed in there. Go ahead.
Well, I would be of the opinion that we approve the plan tonight, but then start building on that plan with a collaborative team to make it happen.
I know, and I understand what Dean is saying, but if you realize that this is for the next 10 years, it's going to be hard to put a price on something if you're not going to do it for 10 years, because you know what has happened even in the last 5 years. You put a price on something and you know, it'll just double before you ever get to it. So I don't think it hurts to prioritize and go from that. I don't know, does that help, Dean, on your concerns?
A little bit, but not all the way. But first impressions community exchange, the visiting group that came in identified the trails and wayfinding and signage as recommendations to proceed with. So there are some, like I said, when we talked about this report the last time, there are some good things in there that I can see right away that with collaboration across our different committees and user groups and service clubs, we can put into play right away. But the bigger things like trail expansion, the arena costs, parkland costs, those things need to be, we need to take a deeper dive into those before we go any further. So I would still want to have that collaborative session first and identify some of our main priorities before adopting the rest of the plan. Just that would put my mind at ease a little bit more than where we are right now.
Okay, so if I'm getting this right, you would just like to defer the adoption of the plan at this time?
That's my thought right now, Your Worship. Yes.
Okay.
If I may, I would just offer to council and deputy mayor that it being a 10-year master plan, it is meant to serve as a guide, and it's there, you know, largely made from public input. And certainly there's aspects where council are going to have to look at what's in the plan, and when the time comes from staff bringing something forward, what the cost of that proposal is and weigh it against the impeding interests of other areas of the municipality. So I would tend to agree that it's not a approval of this document, green light, we go ahead and do all these things. There's certainly ebbs and flows, and again, it being 10 years, something could change quite drastically, which would change a major aspect of the plan. We would certainly welcome the visioning and strategic planning session from a staff perspective. And I do believe that we've already have a quite hefty budget. We are prepared around signage, and we're prepared to roll that out pretty well immediately, and that's already been captured in your 2025 draft budget.
Okay. As far as the arena goes, I'm gathering that the consultants that we've hired are soon going to start on that and give us, once they get that study done, we'll know exactly what condition the arena's in and where we're at there. So,
Yeah, through you, Mayor McKenzie, we're doing the arena as a test subject, if you will, for the whole process of the building condition assessment. So we'll have the arena results fairly soon compared to the rest of the building. So that's something we've kind of tried to expedite and get out in front of you guys to see, and we can kind of have an idea of where we're going with that.
good. Anybody else? I think, just to kind of sum up, I guess, and go back to my original thoughts, like we hired this firm to do a master plan, recreation trails master plan. They've done that. They've come back with a report pointing out things to us that they think that we should look at. And it's like I said before, it's a guide. Their suggestions, we should look at it. It doesn't mean we have to do it. But I think it's pretty hard to put a price value on it, on everything right at this particular time. I think we, whether we sit down and pick out the top 5 out of each one, or however you want to do it, I don't have a problem with that. But I think we have to prioritize what we think are the most important ones to do and use that as a guide to finish that. So, anybody else? Okay, I'll go back. I'll read the motion and then we can go from there. That because we didn't have a mover, second, or anything yet. So the recommendation is that the West Perth Council approve the Recreation Parks and Trails Master Plan as presented. And I think as presented is there. So moved by Councillor Felt, seconded by Councillor Vink. Any further comments? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? The motion is carried. All right. Thank you, Nick. Moving on, 6.7.1 interim tax and temporary borrowing bylaw. Wendy?
Good evening, Mayor McKenzie and Council. So this report is kind of your annual report that comes every year, and we talk about the first part is the interim taxes, and so it just gives us the authority to go ahead and issue the interim tax bill. So in the report, it identifies that roughly $9.9 million will be raised from the interim, and the due dates, just give me 1 second, will be February 28th and May 30th. So you'll see that bylaw under the bylaw section. And then the temporary borrowing bylaw, this is just a standard annual bylaw that comes forward. If we get into trouble with our cash flow, it gives us the ability to borrow. But based on our current financial position, staff do not feel the need that we would need to draw on our letter of credit or line of credit. If there's any questions?
Have we ever borrowed? I didn't think we had.
No, but our current banking agreement, we do have a standing line of credit.
Yeah, yeah. And if I could stand to be wrong, but this used to be the first bylaw of the year, used to be your borrowing bylaw.
Someone beat me to the number.
Yeah, and I think it was it's probably mandated by the province that you have to do that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Questions for Wendy? Okay, the recommendation is that the Council of Municipality of West Perth receives the 2025 interim tax temporary borrowing bylaw report for information. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Duck, Councillor Foster. And I think it said in the report, explains how we arrive at that, but it's basically 50% of the previous
Yeah, it's
year.
50% of last year's taxes. And so the change this year will be, if you remember last year, the waste bins were changed around. So this will be the first time it'll be 50% of both taxes and your garbage levy as
Right.
well.
Yep, okay. All right, so I have a mover and seconder for that. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Okay, and then the draft 2025 budget levy and tax rate report.
So this is just a summary of where we currently are with the budget. There hasn't been too many changes since the last time you guys saw it. There was the EV chargers that were discussed tonight. That's being added. And then we're reclassifying the transfer of 150,000 that's sitting in capital back to operating. Just that's how we should be doing it. Other than that, there's been no changes. So currently we are at the levy requirement is just over $12 million, which is an increase of $926,550.95, or a levy increase of 8.2. And then you have to incorporate your growth. So the tax rate increase would be 6.8 at this point. And so in the report, it does talk about what the average homeowner would expect to see as an increase. So that's listed in the report. Staff are recommending council look at potentially a contribution to reserves, just because we do know we have the arena roof coming up, which is quite significant, and maybe some other higher cost projects. So
Questions for Wendy? Your recommendation, I haven't got it right in front of me, but you were recommending, was it 1%?
just information. Oh, so
Am I jumping too far ahead?
Yeah, this is just for information.
Okay.
But if council is comfortable with a contribution, I think now would be good for staff to know so we can incorporate that into the budget. If not, we'll bring forward the 6.8.
Okay. Councillor Foster?
I had a question more about county, as how their budget was coming along, so we know what their increase was going to be before we made.
Working on it,
I
and
presume so.
I think at this stage of the game, you just put the county budget out of your mind, off to the side, and deal with this one.
Yep. I'm gonna get yelled at if the county budget goes up by a lot, because it's gonna drive the rates up the same.
Well, it'll go up the same amount to everybody. Nicholas, go ahead.
On staff's recommendation for the arena reserve, I was wondering, maybe it'd be appropriate before we decide on whether we'd make a contribution to the arena reserve, that we would have the reserve report maybe at an upcoming council meeting, and then make a decision on whether or not that it might be appropriate.
We can do that. I guess, like, there's two different thoughts on the reserves, and I know some people don't want to put any money into reserves, and some like to always put a little bit in there for a rainy day. We do have a few projects that are going to come up in the future, and the arena is one of them. We also, I used the street in Dublin as an example. We took that out of the budget this year, and we're probably, I'm thinking we're going to do it next year, because we want to camera the infrastructure, the tile that are there before we go in and rip a street up, which is a good idea. So we will have some expenses. We can, I'm looking at Wendy here now, we can defer this. You wouldn't be coming at the next meeting though, but we could bring it back and then have a look at the reserves if you wished.
So our plan is to bring the reserve report. I'm currently working on it. So our hope was to bring it on the 27th along with your 10-year capital plan. so far the 10-year capital plan. Again, I'm going to say we're in a low year versus what's coming ahead. And so staff just feel that a $50,000 increase contribution to the reserves is roughly 60 cents per month for residential. And so
So you're looking at, you're looking at a 0.5%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, hits at 1%, but you're only looking at half of that. Yeah.
but whatever council's comfortable with, I guess, is, I just threw that in as an example, knowing that we do have heavy capital years coming forward. We did defer a bridge. So next year, instead of, I think, 6 million, we're upwards over 7 million. There will be higher asks coming.
Okay, what's your wishes here? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
I would, through you, your worship, I would support Councillor Vink's request to get the reserve report in front of us and then see where we're at and then make recommendations on how much we want to raise the levy to fund our reserves for future projects.
If we even want to raise.
Well, yeah, if we want to, but knowing that I think everyone around the table is aware that money will need to be spent in important areas very soon. So I think we need to examine that carefully before we go further. Thanks.
Okay, I'm just, I'm looking at the recommendation here now, so, yeah, we can just defer that at the time. The recommendation is that, we receive the draft 2025 budget levy and tax rate report for information. Yeah, we could deal with that. Yeah, and then come back with the reserve information at, as you said, on the 27th.
I think my comment in there was just food for thought, something
Yeah.
to think about, that a $50,000 increase doesn't increase a lot
Yeah.
on a monthly
Okay.
amount, but whatever council's comfortable with.
No, we can do that. So I'll just reread the recommendation is that the Council of Municipality of West Perth receives the draft 2025 budget levy and tax rate report for information. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Harold, Councillor Foster. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay. I think that's it for Wendy. Now we're into all the clerk stuff here. Dan?
Yes, thank you, your worship. So a couple section 78 requests, more from a drain standpoint. The first one is branch 2 of the Cook drain. This drain is located in the Fullerton ward, and the request is coming in to replace the drain. It's been reviewed by our drainage superintendent, and at this point, we're looking to proceed with the request and looking to appoint Burnside pending any appeals from Upper Thames. If there's any questions, happy to.
Questions on that? Okay, I'll read the recommendation then. That the Council of Municipality of West Perth proceed with a request for drain major improvements to branch 2 of the Cook drain. And the council pursuant to the Drainage Act and subject to any objection from Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, appoint Paul McIntyre of RJ Burnside and Associates as the drainage engineer on a date 30 days from the notice to the Upper Thames River for an examination of the drainage works and to proceed with the requirements of the proposed improvement under section 78 of the Drainage Act. Mover and seconder for that, Councillor Foster, Councillor Harold. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay. Next is the Northwest drain.
Correct. Section 78 for the Northwest drain. Northwest is a big drain and would have implications across different municipalities. But from our standpoint, it's in the Logan ward and could have impacts on here in East and North Perth. Looking to just reconstruct the access bridge to the property over the current drain. This is, we're looking to appoint Joel Miller of K Smart Associates, again, pending any appeals from Upper Thames River Conservation.
So you say like it is a big drain. They probably wouldn't replace that with a culvert, or would they? Or a couple culverts in there to get the size?
I actually don't have
Yeah.
the engineering side of that. We can report back,
I,
but
I know where it is, and I know there's a bridge there now, like it's an older bridge, but you know, like it would be very costly to replace that, whether there's any more economical ways, but the most of the benefit is primary to the landowner, and you know, there would be a portion will be billed upstream, but the majority of it would be benefit, I would think. So, yeah. Anyways, the recommendation is that the Council Municipality of West Perth proceed with the request for drain major improvements at the northwest drain, and the council pursuant to the Drainage Act and subject to any objection from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, appoint Joel Miller of K-Smart Associates as the drainage engineer on the date 30 days from the notice of Upper Thames for the examination of the drainage works, and proceed with the requirement of the proposed improvement under Section 78 of the Drainage Act. And this is in the Logan ward. So Councillor Duck will move that. Seconder, Councillor Chessel, thank you. Any further comments or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. All right, and we've dealt with the Hillbright drain. Next item then is the Memorial Outdoor Rink proposal. And Dan, that's yours as well.
yes, thank you, Worship. Following a presentation from the CSA group, and I think we've got a few of them in attendance tonight, so thank you for coming. You know, staff were tasked with going back and getting some answers to some questions that had arose. At this time, I think, you know, we're still working with the CSA group on really narrowing down some of these, and we're hoping tonight to get some direction from council to help us, you know, continue down that path and just have some direction that way. Ultimately, we've gone through and done some research on the matter and provided that all in the report. You know, I'd stick to some of the highlights there. Is that from an insurance standpoint, you know, there's no additional cost to the municipality at this point in time. You know, that said, we really need to ensure that we have proper policy and procedure in place, and really the recommendation from our insurance provider at this point is it's very similar to managing an indoor rink. If it were a natural ice instance, it'd be a little bit different on that way, but this way because we're ultimately in care and control, and it's on our property. There's some liability concerns and just some risk management that way. Nevertheless, we've gone through and identified a couple other areas in there, and a couple other options if council wish to consider or explore any of those. But at this time, we're looking to recommend approval for use in the pavilion for the rink on a 3-year trial basis. And as I indicated there, we're looking to subject just to the approval of the operation and procedural policies that way through Director Larson and his team. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. This report was provided publicly, but we did share it with the group in advance. And I will just add that they had the comment that October for a start date was just a kind of a suggested start date. They weren't dead set on that by any means. I don't know if anyone else wishes to speak tonight that's here, but that's me.
We'll certainly open it up. I guess I'll ask members of council if anybody has any questions with regards to Dan's report. Councillor Foster?
Is there any restrictions around what the weather needs to be for the installation of the rink? Like, can it be put in once it's actually freezing cold outside, or does it need to be done before the frost is permanent?
I don't have that answer. I think the intent right now is that we would pick a date, put it up, and then from there we'd have to kind of establish a go time based on the forecast of when we were going to actually flood it or not. But I think we'd probably look to install it prior to winter, I would say, at that point, just for ease.
Any other questions for Dan? Councillor Harold?
Excuse me, thanks. Do we know where where we're at with the option of synthetic is?
Oh.
I don't know. Do we have a volunteer that wants to talk to us? Yes, you can just answer Steve's question there.
Sure.
That'd be a good
Sorry,
place
could
to
you ask it
start.
again?
Yeah, it says in here, CS8 has also indicated they're exploring synthetic ice options.
Yes, so we're working through this, which you guys know, and we appreciate that. It's just something that's been mentioned to us from a couple other groups. With all the work, all the money, all the time, everything, concerns about the natural ice just not being in there long enough. So it's something we're looking at. We're obviously open to chatting or if it's an option. I think we all know the winters are getting a little shorter, right? So yeah, it's something we're looking into. Or probably our big thing right now is just sort of keep pushing along with everything, but it's beyond being told that, looking into it. Nothing firm, which is essentially why we're here as well, right?
So you can just wait there for a minute. Is there any other questions? Dean, go ahead.
Thanks, your worship, through you. I guess a question for staff or the CS8 group. Will we, council, get an update? Like, there's a lot of unknowns here right now in this report. Will we get an update later on in the year before the October start date, just to get an indication on the progress and how many of these unknown questions have been answered and taken care of?
So from our perspective, definitely, this was kind of a first step to make sure that we had your support and approval, and then we would go ahead with Dan and Nick and iron out some of the details and definitely report back. We want the next steps as much as you do.
Anything further to add?
We would also commit to providing council with updates on the project as we go. Really, we just want to make sure that at this stage, this is comfortable, or do we need to take our negotiations or our brainstorming kind of elsewhere is really what we're after.
So Phelps?
First of all, it's a great idea and I love it. I think it keys into when we're looking at the master plan here, putting it in the right place and doing the right thing with it. And there's so much other stuff going on here in this other with renovating the arena, building arena, whatever, in that area. And if you look at synthetic, what do you need for hookups and things like that? And I think if we got a lot more information that we could tie it in and look at that as one of our goals, would be helpful. Because I've had people say, well, what happens if we want to have a snow pitch tournament and the ice thing's in the pavilion and we want a bar in there, or, and is it the right place for it? And I get it, it's covered, it's whatever, but is it just because it's the only building that's covered over there, or do we look at another option somehow in this master plan? So, but I love the addition of that in the community. I think it's just a great benefit. It's just, where do we fit it in? Because there's so much going on in the parking lot, the pavilion, and so many other events, because it's the heart of our events in Mitchell, pretty much, other than the hardball diamonds, right? So you don't want to spend the money and then it's like, oh, we should have.
Councillor O'Donnell, do you have a question?
No, I don't have any questions, but I think Councillor Phelps asked when we were doing the building studies if the concrete in that pavilion was gonna be strong enough to hold the ice.
Yeah, we didn't have concerns with the structural integrity of the concrete. We noted in the report just that the drilling could have impact, and that's speculation. Really, we talked last time that they'd get filled with some sort of polymer residue once the ring comes out, but it was just something to know that it could happen. But as far as just generally holding the weight, we're no concerns.
LeBlanc?
I think let's put the pavilion to good use. It's a 3-year commitment, and so we don't have a what if some sort of snow pitch tournament comes here. It's a commitment for 3 years. So I don't see an issue that we wouldn't run into if after 3 years we will run into something, then we have the information. But let's put the pavilion to good use over the next 3 years during the winter time.
If I could just make a quick note about the snow pitch tournament, we actually are having a CS8 Memorial Snow Pitch Tournament, and we're using the community center for the bar. So we're using the fields for the games, but we're going indoors for food and beverages. So just a
Okay.
note.
Yeah, no, fair enough, fair enough. Okay, any other comments? Appreciate you coming tonight and kind of clarifying a few things here. So we do have a recommendation, and the recommendation is that the Council of the Municipality of West Perth approve the use of the Tim Hortons Pavilion in Ketterson Park for the CS8 Memorial Outdoor Ice Rink on a 3-year trial basis and subject to the Director of Community Services approval of operational procedures and policies. We have a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Duck, seconded by Councillor Foster. Any other questions at this time before we carry on? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you very much. All right, moving on, we've got some correspondence. The first one is a letter with regards to the Community Safety Wellbeing Partnership Council, formation of a mental health community action group. Questions on that one? Councillor or Deputy Mayor Chinkowski?
Yep, thanks, Your Worship. So I would ask, or it's proposed here that that a delegation from this group could be made to West Perth, and I would wholeheartedly ask that staff make the necessary delegation arrangements, because when something's getting lost in the message when I put forward this notice of motion. And what it boils down to is when I'm not reading policy stuff, I'm listening to people tell me that there's roadblocks to getting the help they need for mental health. And it's reached a frustration point. And people, they're just not getting the help that they need when they need it. And they don't know who to turn to. And those people need to be heard by this group that's in charge of the community wellness plan. That's my intent. And I'm not trying to suggest duplication or make things more onerous. So I think it would be great if we could just have someone come here and we could talk about it in a delegation setting, and then perhaps carry that conversation forward offline. But like I say, there's people out in our community that they're seeking the help, there's roadblocks, and they're desperate to get the help, and they're desperate just to have someone listen. And that's my intent.
All right, fair enough, Dean. And they've certainly offered that alternative that they would come here. So I don't know if we just give staff direction, just ask them to come. I don't think we need a motion or anything further on that one. The other one is just a letter from the Ministry of Solicitor General with regards to auto theft and bail reform. It's correspondence. Council Municipality of West Perth, accept correspondence as information. Mover and seconder for that, Councillor Feltz, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. We've got a letter here, a request from the Toronto Batman's Fast Pitch Club. We had them last year. I don't know if there's any further that you want to add, Dan, at this time?
No, I think just looking for municipal significance declaration so they can go ahead through liquor licensing aspect that way. We have no concerns with the event. We think it's a rather I guess higher skilled event, so we're happy to host and be considered.
Okay, any questions with regards to that? Concerns or anything? Okay. So the recommendation is the Council Municipality of West Perth declare the ISC qualifier tournament held by the Toronto Batman Men's Fast Pitch Club at Catterson Park on June the 13th, 2025 from 3 to 1 a.m. June the 14th, 2025 from 9:30 to 1 a.m. and on June the 15th, 2025 from 9:30 until 8 p.m. To be an event of municipal significance and or community significance, and advise the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario that it has no objection to it taking place. And if we're going to mover and seconder for that recommendation, moved by Councillor Chessel, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Fournier. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. The next one is I found a little difficult understanding. Anyways, the updates to the Thames Sydenham Source Protection Plan and Assessment Reports. Dan, do you want to add anything to it? I wonder if we shouldn't have them come try and explain what they're doing.
We can certainly do that. At the end of the day, it's about drinking water source protection. So it's almost a zoning exercise that way, or at least how we view it, what the source protection is. And yeah, I guess we're happy to have them come and maybe explain their plan in more detail.
Well, they're looking for us to
endorse
reply or endorse it before the middle of February, if I have my dates right. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one. It seemed kind of intense, but it's whatever your wishes are. Councillor Foster?
I like the mayor's intention to get them to come.
Okay, all right. So we'll wait to endorse it until after they come. We'll just take that motion and defer it until some night when they're here before the middle of February, I think, anyway. So, all right. We need a motion just to defer that, or it's okay? Just
take
yeah.
no action.
Okay. All right. Nope, that's good. All right. I don't think there's any further council reports at this time. We do have some bylaws. List of bylaws is there. We have bylaw 1 to provide drainage works for the Hillbright drain. Bylaw 2 is interim levy. Bylaw 3 is borrowing from basically the borrowing bylaw to carry us through for part of the year if we need it. Bylaw 3 is the borrowing bylaw. Bylaw 4 is stop up on Close Peter Street in Dublin. And Dan, I don't know, maybe you can give us an update on that one a little bit or not?
Yeah, so the council may recall it in Dublin, there's a Peter Street road allowance, so we're looking to sell that off to the neighboring parties. The plan's been deposited now, and this is really just the next step is that we got to close that road, and then we can finalize the paperwork.
Yeah, we had it at a council meeting, I think in the fall, didn't we? It's a while ago since it was here, but we've dealt with it. Bylaw number 6. No, bylaw, let me see where I'm at here. Bylaw 4. Okay, so bylaw zoning, help me out here. Bylaw 4 was the stop up. Okay, so this one here is the one for, that's not this. We're gonna add that one, yeah, okay. All right, so bylaws, zoning bylaw amendment 304, 2025 is a bylaw to amend bylaw number 100, 1998, as amended for property legal described as Plan 339, Part Lot 17, in the municipality of West Perth, 190 Napier Street that we dealt with at the public meeting. Bylaw, zoning bylaw 305 is the one to deal with the severance that Rose's Head Lot 4, Concession 1 in the Fullerton. And then we have an additional one to add to amend bylaw 67, 2024, being a bylaw to establish and require payment of various fees and charges for the municipality of West Perth. And
I can speak very quick
right.
to it, and we provided all of council a copy. Is just we just had a bit of a communication is when we were provided the updated county fees. Previously, those fees included the local or lower tier portion. When we were provided with the update, we were advised they were not included. So this is amending them to see, and really the change is what you're seeing is the local or West Perth fee is being broken out with the county fee that's being added. So
okay. All right. So the recommendation that we have here is that the Council Municipality of West Perth give first and second reading to bylaw 1, 2, 3, 4, zoning bylaw 304, zoning bylaw 305, and bylaw 6. Did I get that right? Okay. Yeah.
Who made the Napier Street vote? Was Phil in on that vote? Or how close were we?
Oh. Yeah, I didn't see on the screen there. Yeah. No. Phil, you're there now. I wasn't looking, honestly, when we did that vote.
I'm opposed of it.
You're opposed?
Yeah.
Okay, but you're not here.
No.
But I think by the vote count, and then you passed it, you carried it at the end, meant when you counted up the votes, and yours included, would pass that.
Yeah, I
that,
think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
no, I
so
know it's a good
if
thing.
it was 3-5, and even if Phil was
Yeah.
opposed, that would be 5-4, and then Mayor
Yeah.
McKenzie passed it for at least the 6th there.
Yeah, okay. You scared me for a minute there, none? Yeah, okay, so I read the recommendation there. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Vink? Councillor Duck? Questions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? How you voting, Phil?
In favor.
Okay, thank you. And then third and final reading for bylaw. Now, why did we stroke out the one here? Oh, okay. So bylaw 2, 3, 4, zoning bylaw 305, 304, and addition of bylaw number 6 for third and final reading. Mover and seconder for that. Don't everybody put their hands up at once. Councillor Foster, Councillor Fournier. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. So there's a number of events coming up in the community there. I think the next one that probably concerns us as much as anything is the 27th is our next regular council meeting. And also, I'll make note of February the 7th and 8th. It's the Community Connect Engage, and I believe Lindsay has reached out with an email for people for that. Oops. Dublin Lions has a Valentine's dance and dinner and dance on February the 8th. And the Rotary Club has Hearts for Hospice on the 14th. So those are kind of the main ones coming up. I'm not aware of any notices of motion. I'm looking, no. And other business, I don't have anything. Does anybody else have anything to bring up at this time? No, okay. We do have a closed session to deal with and well, it's a closed session to deal with municipal recreation, earth, power, and legal updates. So the recommendation that we have to go into closed session at this time is that we proceed into closed session at 9 o'clock to address matters related to a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to negotiations by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudge significantly the competitive position or interfere with significantly with negotiations of a person, group, or organization, and litigation or potential litigation, legal updates. So, mover and seconder that we go into closed session at 9 o'clock. Councillor Chessel, Councillor Vink, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? We are carried. bylaw, so bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council, the corporation municipality of West Perth be read a first and second time, 13th day of January. Mover and seconder for that. Councillor Fournier, Councillor Foster, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. And bylaw number 5 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council, the corporation, the municipality of West Perth be read a third time. Moved by. Nobody wants to confirm. Councillor Duck, Councillor Fournier, all those in favor? That is carried. And finally, a motion that we adjourn at 9:54. Moved by Councillor Phelps, seconded by Deputy Mayor Jankowski. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Very good.